Alright guys, if you ever want to know how to do a lamb from start to finish, this is the video to watch. It's a bit of a long one, 17 minutes, so save it if you don't want to watch it now. It's pretty cool, you might learn a thing or two. So that's the chump and the legs, and this is the rest of the lamb, so your trunk and your forequarter. Going right now through the fourth rib, 4 ribs on the forequarter, 7 or 8 ribs on your cutlet rack, I can't remember, I think it's 8. 8 rib on the cutlet for 12 ribs total, that makes sense. Shanks are off, separating the little point end brisket from the shanks and tipping said shanks. So just going through the seam there, nice and easy. You get a bit of crap on a lamb, which you'll see. There's a lot of waste, like your neck is a waste on the forequarter, your shank's sort of a waste, your point end brisket pieces, they're sort of a waste. You're kind of better off buying boxed forequarters than carcass lamb if you need forequarter chops. Anyway, this one was stuck a bit. This one was stuck a bit badly, I should say. So we're trimming off all that blood splatter and cutting our round chops. We're doing about 3 of them. Reason why we're doing them is we're reducing the size of the actual forequarter chop, which is this way. So if you left all them on and then cut forequarter chops, all of a sudden they're like 300 grams a pop nearly. So they're big chops. You're not going to get a lot to feed a family. So it's a bit fucking expensive. So that's why we do the round chops. We use them to trim down these chops and, get 9-10 chops consistent size. So again, the blood splatter, we're peeling that off, just using the blade there, shaping it around. There we go, looking a bit cleaner. And then the round chops, trying to keep the where my left hand is, where the eye of the forequarter, trying to keep that nice and square to the bandsaw, not like flat. You want the chops to be even. You don't want them to be like sort of slippery dippery. So you got to, just use your judgment with that one. This one's a lot easier because, you got the flat part of the forequarter bone on the bench. So it doesn't move, it doesn't wiggle. It's just a way cleaner cut, nice and easy, straight through. So we're just checking to see how much fat is in that last chop. If there's too much fat, then we've gone too far and it's not going to be a chop. So you've got to check things like that, So just clean that bandsaw off. That's literally all of our scrap. You got the end part of the forequarter, little bits of knuckle, all that fat shit. So we've got the trunk here. We're going to halve that. So line it up with the middle of the blade and straight down that chine bone, trying to keep the feather bones on both sides of the eye protected. So if you're a butcher that likes to hang their lamb, you could sort of, you got the eye protected still until that day when you need to actually cut it up. We're leaving no ribs on the loins. Sometimes we leave a rib on, depends if we're chasing loins rather than cutlets. But in this instance, this is a lamb for, I think it was just actually a walk-in person that wanted a whole lamb cut up. So doing that for them. Ribs come off, then you got your loin and your cutlets, separating that, trying to start that cut nice and straight and then turning that cut so you can sort of like maximize yield on both your chops. All right, done that, chined that. So chining that, we just stand it up, just running through the, I don't know, I guess the joint, I guess you'd say. Anyway, squaring up our lamb ribs, 1 and 2, taking the chine off then, and the tail comes off. Tail's going to be like that flat tail. It's pretty much going to be trim, but I don't know, without actually deboning a leg or a forequarter, the trim you get off a lamb is pretty fatty and not that great for sausages. You sort of need one of the legs or one of the forequarters to bring it up to speed. Otherwise, it's just a bit of, more of a pet food grade rather than an actual sausage grade. So trimming up these loins next, we're just taking the bit of surface fat off the top there, scooping the middle out. If your ends are a bit dicky, like this end there, from where that was split, we square that off, and then running the chops down hard with a knife. Generally 7 or 8. You can go 9, 10 if you want skinnier chops, which, if we're doing these, a whole carcass for you, ultimately it's your call. Whatever the hell you want us to do, we can do. So we can do them skinny, we can do them fat. We don't have to mark them. We can just run them straight at the bandsaw really, really tiny. But the beauty about marking them is you don't get all that bandsaw dust, which sends your bones, your meat and your bones off a lot quicker. So that's why we use our chuck wipes there. We throw them out roughly every 3 hours. So we sort of like use it, rinse it, use it, rinse it, use it, rinse it, use it, rinse it. And then we're like, all right, well, time for a new one. So you go through probably four chuck wipes a day. I think it's a cleaner method than the chop scraper and all that sort of jazz. All right, so loin chops, there's multiple ways to cut these. I've never seen 2 butchers cut them the same. This way is probably the best way. Bone down, so you've got a nice stable platform. Tail at the front, so the tail can't get dragged into the bandsaw. So that's probably the best way. So, and you can keep them all nice and even, nice and straight. Try have them in your rows that you would, that you're going to sort of present them and pack them. So this is the way I see that's probably the second most common is bone first, tail out backwards. Theory being that, if you drag it through, you're not going to catch anything. Yeah, it's also all right, but I don't like how much you have to pull the meat or how close your fingers are to the blade when you're separating the meat with that one. I prefer the other one when using that tail part because you can pull the tail pretty far apart. Right, I might stop the video here and just speed this up. This is just wiping down shit, so we don't need to, go slow. We're just wiping the edge where the bandsaw blade, touched all the meat. All right, that should have paused. And so hang on, give me 1 sec. I'll pause. Cool, I can see it speeding up double time. All right, guys, I'm editing on the go here, so we're a bit hesitant. We're going to do the cutlet racks next. This lady asked for racks, not cutlets. So I'll show you how I French them up. It's a bit different from most people. I like to do it while still sanding. So we've got our chine there, we've got our feathers. So we're just scraping that there, cleaning it up. There we go, you can see the difference. That's all the bone dust gone. So these little feather bones here, we're going to take them off. And then you can see the paddy wax there. That's a yellow tendon, I suppose, would be the word. And that basically holds your head up. That's the tendon that runs from the back of your neck all the way down the base of your spine. So doing these, I like to French them. Generally, like 1/3 of the whole thing is where I sort of French from. I go from the loin end to the forequarter end, right over the top of the scapula. As I do that, I can sort of see where the oyster is on it, and I can go over the top and back underneath. And that's sort of how I do that. Then I go to the actual Frenching of it. I like to sort of angle the whole thing, use the bench as leverage and twist it upwards. And then I find I got enough leverage and enough stability there, I suppose, that I don't have to have my second hand next to the ribs at all. Like most people hold that intercostal they're fleecing out. And I've seen it a few times where people have held that intercostal, come up with their other hand and just run the knife straight up the top along their thumb. So I try to do it like that, where I can keep my hands away because I don't use a glove. So I've got to actually watch where my left hand is at all times. And that seems to be the safest way I can do it while still having speed and going clean. So again, I'll show you that again. So we'll clean this up here, just making sure we got all that chine bone off, and then we can remove our feathers. Nice and easy. And we'll try to take our paddy whack with it, which is that, throw that in our scrap pile, and then running down along the top of it, over the top of our scapula. We can see on the side there where the eye meat is, the oyster, so we'll run over the top, back hard up underneath, and then we can pull that straight out. Nice and easy. Now, because we've already marked all the way along, we can just go all the way back, going along the ribs, just running our shoulder of our knife basically, essentially down the ribs. You've got to have a nice wide shoulder when you're doing lamb is probably the easiest way to do it. So I've got two knives, like I got my two boning knives, this Victorinox here, which, has a more of a shoulder, and then I've got a old Green River wooden handle one that has more of a straighter knife. So feels a lot sharper while you're cutting. Right, again, you see the way I use the bench as leverage there, just so I can keep my left hand completely out of the way, and I still get a nice tidy job Frenching. Sometimes like this, I go over the top there and just fleece those top corners. And if I get a stubborn little bastard like that, there we go, I'll slide him off too. Beautiful, that's them. What's our next step? Probably these ribs. You got to sort of cut these on the bandsaw where I cut the chine off, or the chine bone, or the brisket bone, whatever the fuck it was, brisket bone. You got to really get that nice and close. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to knife them. You'll have to use a chopper, or you have to use a bandsaw. I didn't bring a chopper out here for this video, so I think it's this next one here that I sort of I couldn't get through 3 ribs. It just felt a bit too hard on my knife, so I opted to stop. I could have got my steak knife out and smacked him with a steak knife, and that would have probably broke him just using the heel of the knife and pushing down with my palm. But I'm right next to a fucking bandsaw here, so sometimes it's kind of pointless doing those sorts of jobs when you got all this equipment around you. So marking it, you could see in the middle there where I couldn't get through the ribs, and you can see the spacing. You can see like where I've cut. You can see the bone, and you see the red, and I've cut in between that red. Try and aim for the middle of that, because generally that's where the the bone's sort of weakest, I suppose, so you can get through it with a boning knife pretty easy without having to do what I've just done there. So lamb ribs are off. We'll stand them up just so we can get a look at this whole body when we're finished, and how much cuts you can get off it and whatever else. So I think this came out at off memory, we charged it out at $18 a kilo, $17.99. It was expensive lamb. It cost us like $14. So realistically, we made 25-30%, which is sort of what you need when you're doing the labor and stuffing around, and you get all the waste and whatever else. So you got to make something anyway. So that's sort of what we make on the whole ones. And we're just dusting these 4/4 off. Same thing, got our chuck, and we're getting rid of all these. We're putting them face up as we go. So we sort of got 4 one way, 4 the other way. Then you stack the nicer looking ones on top of the ones that have that bit of fat like that. So you see how those ones on the end sort of got that bit of fat in the middle of them? So they're they're still good chops. Like, they're basically 80% meat and 20% fat. So they're still good chops, but the retail linear, you're not going to sell them if you leave them on the face. So you get the other ones and you chuck them on top. Nice and easy. These round bones, I like to remove that last rib that we've split and all that fat along that. So just shitting through there, and that cleans that up, I think, a lot more presentable than just having that big lump of fat and cartilage, and actually in some points a little bit of gland. So cleans that up all nicely. 1, 2, and this third one always flows the other way because you've got a bit of shank bone on there, so it goes a lot better this way than the other side like the other two, which is annoying if you're doing halves, but if you're doing wholes, it presents quite well. So this is going to be boring because this is exactly the same, so we'll speed this up again. So let me pause my audio and cut the video, and then we'll click back on. Catch ya! Alright, now that's done, we're back at the video. So same again as the other side, we're just wiping down all the bone dust. You can't really mark a 4/4 chop with your knife, you know what I mean? Like, you got the scapular bone running through there, then you got the chine bone and whatever else. So you could, there's that all presented up, nice and lean, getting about, say, probably 20 chops out of the 4/4 there. Anyway, back to what I was. You can't mark this one with a knife. It has to be sort of bandsawed. You could sort of, you could do the old school neck chops with a knife, and then you could do a banjo 4/4 roast. But that's some pretty old school butchery. It doesn't really happen this side of the pond anymore. So we sort of just chop them all out like this, and off you go. Right, next we got legs and chump. So we're going to separate the chumps from the legs. Firstly, we'll halve it just so you can get an idea. Usually we can just do it as a pair. But, if I show you the middle, you can sort of get an idea. So running down the center of that spine again and the tailbone, running that down. Let's go, Jared, hurry up. Boom. And now where to hit it is just south of that hip bone. So you can sort of see the hip bone there on the leg of lamb. And to mark that, that little ball joint, the cup joint there, it's just like maybe 2 centimeters off that hip bone. So just there, pop. And that's how you get it. Right, we tip these because really the top of the shank's sort of just bone and shit. No one really needs that in their pot. And then we've got our legs and we've got our chumps, which our chumps we can get lamb rump steaks, or we can get chump chops, or as a roast you can do like a little 2-person roast with a lamb rump roast, and they are fucking delicious. So we're getting rid of this fat around the tail there, and then we're just getting our rag and just wiping any bone dust or any fragrance of any nasties that are on there, you know what I mean? So we just clean it up, we have a look at it all, make sure everything's presentable, there's no grass seeds in the lamb or anything the abattoir's missed, or there's like no grease or anything that's maybe it's fallen on the ground, in the bloody in the truck or something. So you just check everything as you go, especially on your big cuts like this, you know what I mean? So you give everything a once over before you cut it, but as you're cutting, you're always wiping, you're always checking and just making sure everything's right, because lamb ain't cheap now. Like, a leg of lamb's like $50 to $100 in some stores, so you sort of got to make sure everything's good, All right, chumps, removing the skirt there, that was the thin skirt, and actually no, that was a thick skirt. So that was your flank steak and your thick skirt. So removing that, marking that eye fillet there, and you're just sort of bringing that down and around just so you can get between the tailbone and the hip bone. Once you sort of get that, you can give it a pull and then just cut the rest of that tailbone off. And that's how you separate your chumps. So now we just sort of face it. So you've got that little bit of leg meat on there, which is not as tender as the rump. So it's basically going topside, silver side, and round steak as opposed to rump steak. So you trim that pretty heavy on that. And then you get generally 4 chops per chump. No matter the lamb, you generally get 4 chops. That's sort of how it goes. There's 8 loins or 7 loins if you're doing them a bit thick, and then there's 4 chumps, there's 8 cutlets, and there's about 8 to 11 4/4 per side. And that's sort of generally all the chops you get. So marking that tailbone again, going through that joint. It is probably my most hated bit to go through. I generally fuck that up more than anything else in butchery. Taking that tailbone off is my worst thing I do. So marking these 1, 2, 3, 4. A lot of butchers I know, including my boy Reese, like, he marks it in half and then marks the 2 chops off each half, just so he's got 4 even steaks every time. Not a bad idea. Generally, he's got a better idea than me these days. I don't butcher too much, so I forget my processes and I don't have that flow of how I always do things, you know? So we're taking that face off, and now we're just getting those chump chops. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Getting that other face before we cut the rest of our chops, just safer than trying to. It's always safer. Trying to get the ends cut off before you get to them is smarter, because you sort of like, if you got one chop and then a daggy ass end, you got to trim off it. It can be a bit risky if you're a bit new on the bandsaw, or even if you're old on the bandsaw. Like if you're not paying attention and you're trying to do that, you know, you're a bit rounded, you don't have a flat surface, so you're gonna eventually have a fucking accident, which you know, is never much fun. So here we got our lamb, we've got 2 shanks, all our ribs, cutlet racks, loins, forequarters, you name it, it's all there, all in front of your face. So if you ever want to order a full lamb or a side of lamb, this is generally our standard way of cutting it up. And I mean, you got a good fucking idea now. I think one of these sets people back. Well, today's price is in between $300-400 for a 20 to 25 kilo lamb. A side of lamb, obviously half of that. So cleaning these chumps off, just removing all that bone dust. Again, there's the 2 with a bit of fat in them and the 2 with not, so you sort of clean them up and make them the not-so ones with the face, you know what I mean? Because we're retail butchers at the end of the day. You want to present everything to its best and look pretty, and that's how shit sells, but that's human nature. Anyway, there's our chumps, 8 chump chops, and we are done. That's our lamb, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video. Peace!